Welcome to the far corner of the omniverse. Hope you enjoy your stay. I can walk on stars. Hearing that, some of you probably think I'm on drugs, or that my head's on a different wavelength, but you probably wouldn't say it that nicely. Most of you think I'm trying to sell you something. A handful of you think I'm in a cult. A handful of that handful want to join that cult. But the truth is, I just want whoever finds this to not feel alone. My name's Rastelle, and I'm a Starlite. When I discovered I was a woman, home became a cage. Education was my escape. I majored in aerospace engineering and mystic science, because the world I'm from is a cage too, a sinking ship that would drown itself to afford a glass of water. If I was to be free, I needed to marry the science and the supernatural. College was the first space where I started living freely as a woman, but it was difficult to find friends I fully connected with. I was too pessimistic for some, too optimistic for others, sometimes simultaneously. Outside of that was an intersectional puzzle. My skin always felt like both chains and the key to unlock them. Was never able to fully comprehend the weight of my melanin as easy as others around me seemed to. I strive my damnedest to recognize, understand, and appreciate the totality of that weight without deifying it or any other shade of life. I was fortunate to pass more often than not, even being hit on by a transphobe at one point. But the times I didn't pass destroyed me. I would cry and lay in bed for hours not wanting to exist. I have a love-hate relationship with being bi. Many cis people assume we're all straight, although unfortunately that's not how a lot of them would define it. And at times I'm only welcome into some spaces because of that assumption. Every woman isn't a special song, not the mere menu for the male gaze we're often reduced to. But there's this pressure that if I'm open about my attraction to women, I'm going to be perceived as not a woman after all, just another weirdo after one thing. Believe me, I don't want to treat other women like a lot of men treat us. One of my biggest fears is that I have internalized misogyny that's yet to be exercised, manifesting in ways I'm unaware of. On the other end of the spectrum, there was a guy who knew I was trans and was moderately accepting, but one day he asked me out of nowhere, "You know you could like females too, right?" So naturally, I made a note to talk about cute guys whenever he was around. A bit before midterms, I threw myself into my studies, feeling guilty for having any time to myself, until one afternoon, I remembered why I was in school in the first place. I put on one of my favorite outfits, a blue and white sundress with white goddess sandals. I was going to spend the rest of the afternoon in the school garden to unwind. But after that day, my life was never the same. As I walked through a parade of sunflowers, roses, zinnias, dahlias, cherry blossoms, tulips, astilbes, and a plethora of flowers I'd never seen before, my mind felt serene. Until I heard a knock at my head. Half conscious, I heard three voices. One cruel, another much kinder, the third indifferent. I felt myself being lifted, carried, and thrown. Before I was thrown, I saw a sign at dusk that read, "Dumpster Pit." Then there were several more knocks at my head. I woke up in the opposite of the garden. There were fields of garbage that seemed to go on forever, more worn-out, stained toilets than anyone should be allowed to see, towering piles of unloved clothes even the greatest masochist wouldn't dare to drape, statues of sewage, monuments of mold, and rotting corpses of all species, shapes, and sizes abound. The first couple of days, I just sat in the least disgusting spot I can find and cried until I couldn't stay awake. The third day, I realized something odd. I was clearly miles underground with my new stalactite sky, so why could I see so much, so vividly? My stomach interrupted my epiphany. As my mind was trying to repress the mere thought of eating down here, my body moved on its own. I didn't fully realize it at the time, but that light gave me hope. My best bet was canned goods and bottled water. For 6 hours I searched and found a single can of tuna with no pull tab. Not ideal, but veganism is not a high priority for this world. It took me about 40 minutes to get it open. But the joy I felt when I finally got in, they needed a new word for. But as I ate, I became more aware of my face. There were weeds in the yard. I was tempted to use the can as a razor, but I couldn't risk an infection in here. I ripped my dress and made a face mask. As I continued to eat, I noticed in the vast distance that there was an end to the light, where darkness began. I finished as fast as I could and continued my journey. After 2 hours, it felt further and further away the closer I got, so I just stopped and stood there. What if I deserve this? What if I'm in hell? Then suddenly I felt a drop, then a few more, then several. It was raining. I was cautious at first, attempting in vain to avoid the drops, but I knew dirty water. You couldn't pay me to drink tap, and there were little to no signs of pollution. I filled up on the rain and kept drinking even when my stomach was full. I danced until it stopped. I didn't know why yet, but now I knew I was supposed to be here. Turns out the distance was dehydration, because before I knew it, I was only a few minutes, a handful of feet away. There was a giant dark passage behind the sources of light. 2 white cylindrical devices with black carvings that I couldn't make out yet. Then I stopped again, but this time not because I wanted to. From the darkness ahead I heard a noise that was like a deafening whisper. What emerged was a flying creature the size of a car, with the wings of a bat, body and face of a tarantula, and the head and skin of a snake. You are listening to Far Fiction. Hey lovely listeners, Farley here, enjoying your stay, picking up what we're putting down. Visit patreon.com/projectfar, or you can buy us a coffee. Links in the description below to support the channel. The future of the Farverse depends on it, so no pressure. Thanks for listening. Now, back to the show. For brevity, let's call them Basnatula. I really strive to live in harmony with other existers, but Basnatula didn't seem to share that philosophy. They hissed at me, baring its fangs and jowls. I was terrified, but I wasn't turning back now. I darted for the darkness and rolled underneath, grabbing the scrolls. I swung around face to face with my angry acquaintance. If hissing were venom, I'd be dead. I dashed into the passage, which was a much thinner area than the rest of the cave, and I noticed my new flashlights were scrolls, made from a technology way more advanced than I had ever seen. As I ran, I began to skim. It wasn't a language I recognized, but it wasn't indecipherable. Then I stubbed my toe. The pain made me notice a fork in my path. 2 tunnels. Then I felt Basnatula's tongue on my neck. Shit. I chose left because why not? I'm left-handed, and continued to read. Given the power of that light, I had a feeling something in here could help me. They were called the Starlite Scrolls, and the table of contents listed a chapter on self-defense. The path was getting tighter, and it was becoming more and more difficult to breathe. Basnatula got stuck and hissed and roared in ravenous rage. My relief lasted about 2 seconds when I crashed into a wall of stone, a dead end. Basnatula was about 10 feet away from me, tongue lashing like a whip. Getting sick of them, I jumped up and stomped with both feet down on their tongue. That shut them up for a little minute, but they were still violently thrashing with all their might. I navigated to self-defense and sped read something about a reverse orbit field. It looked like it would cost a lot of stamina, but if it worked, it would make a small radius of gravitational push to at least get Basnatula away. Reverse orbit field! I casted and screamed with my body, mind, and soul. Nothing happened. Then all of a sudden my stalker was forced back a few feet, and I was momentarily tripped by the tongue, but I lightning up and started charging at them. They rolled and crashed and bumped into the cave walls violently, as my dull but faintly flickering instincts got me out of the tunnel by an eyelash. As we returned to the wasteland, my heart felt like it had a pin pull out of it, but I kept my momentum, still pushing them because I couldn't let this force field go to waste. Garbage repelled and swung around me, and my eyes flew around the cave, scanning for something to ram them into to end this. There, a stalagmite. I took a hard swerve to the right and jumped and flipped with all my strength. Its fluids and insides splashed everywhere. Thankfully, the force field stayed up long enough to be an umbrella. After the hum of the force field dissipated, I passed out. When I woke up, I immediately dove for the scrolls. There had to be a key to get me out of here. Frustrated, I threw them down, took a deep breath, and decided to start in chapter 1. And the name slapped my brain. How to Walk on Stars. It was a brief chapter that I dipped my head in I don't know how many times. Finally, I had a plan. For brevity, I needed at least one star I could see to land on. I put the scrolls in my bra. They had a mechanism that could collapse them into little circles, and ran in search of the entrance. I sprinted for an hour straight. I didn't know where this energy came from, and I didn't care because I stopped when I finally saw for the first time in 4 days the moon, wearing one of their crescents, and beside it, a single faint glimmering star. There was also a strange, large, X-shaped scar on it I never noticed before, but I couldn't dwell on that now. I did a handstand right beneath the entrance, tilted my head down so I can see the star, and pushed with every moment of my life up until now. There was a world of speed and wind around me, but I hugged my eyes open, telling them it was going to be okay. Then I was splashed by a tidal wave of warmth. You know how some people feel more comfortable in heels than their own bare feet? That's how I felt the penultimate moment before contact. My body sang, my mind danced, my soul blossomed. I was walking on stars. I'll never forgive that anonymous trio, but I swore I would take my revenge by living so beautifully. Everything and everyone that is, was, and will be can feel it. Hope you enjoyed your stay. Like, subscribe, and share to keep the portal to the Farverse open. And thanks for watching. Take care, lovely listeners. Later!